So, interestingly enough, after Child's Play 3, which we both said was pretty good, but maybe a little bit rushed, we didn't love it. The audience didn't love it. The box office didn't love it. The movie basically tanked at the box office, thus killing off the Child's Play series for quite some time. You remember Child's Play 3 was 1991, so we went a full 7 years with nothing going on with Child's Play. But like many things in the 90s, the entire horror genre was flipped on its head when Scream came out and basically rejuvenated the entire horror genre. Everything suddenly went into pre-production. Suddenly there was 50,000 slasher movies, a lot of Scream ripoffs, as we know. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, the list goes on and on. Halloween H2O is now Halloween's back. And Chucky was no different. Suddenly there was an interest in Chucky as well. So we're dusting off the old doll, bringing him back with a new twist. Don Mancini, who basically has overseen the entire franchise, had this idea kind of in the mid-90s. He was watching Bride of Frankenstein and actually got the idea for Bride of Chucky from that. And he pitched it in the mid-90s, and the studios were like, nope, not interested. But again, when Scream kind of made the horror genre the big thing again, then he pitched it again. They were like, oh yeah, Chucky works now. I mean, Michael's coming back. They were still working on Freddy vs. Jason was trying to get a movie out, but it would take all the way until 2003. Speaking of Freddy vs. Jason, though, this obviously has a connection to that because Ronnie Yu would get Freddy vs. Jason based on the strength of Bride of Chucky. When they were trying to find a director for Freddy vs. Jason, they had enjoyed Bride of Chucky, and they liked the kind of visual style and the Hong Kong flair that he brought to it. So that helped him get Freddy vs. Jason, which, as we know, is Nick's favorite movie of all time. So I know you're happy to see our favorite director, Ronnie Yu, back here again for Bride of Chucky. For Nick's thoughts on Freddy vs. Jason, find our Freddy vs. Jason podcast in the archives. One of his favorite movies. The whole podcast is Nick basically worshiping Freddy vs. Jason, describing how much of a fan of it he is, and he can't get enough. And I for one, commend Nick on his crazy fandom of Freddy vs. Jason. Me, myself, I'm a little bit harder on the movie, but Nick, I mean, he just defends the movie, all the time. So, well, yeah, there you go. There's your Jason bug. So, anyways, so.
Why do you gotta lie to people all the time, man?
No, what are you talking about? I remember nothing but positivity coming up from you in regards to Freddy vs. Jason. I'm just telling them to go in the archives and check it out, especially if you're a fan of Freddy vs. Jason. So
you're gonna have people sending us death threats.
Now, but I think that I'll say this: whether you like Ronnie Yu or don't like him, he does have a specific style. Like he has a visual style that I can see, like the similarities between Bride of Chucky and Freddy vs. Jason. You can kind of tell the same director made both movies. And you also made the comment about the rock music and the metal. He definitely that's part of his style.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up because another thing that I could tell, I've never seen it. Don't believe I've seen any other Ronnie Yu movies, but the main difference I caught from them, or the main simulators I caught from them, was the music. I mean, this movie literally starts off with a Rob Zombie song.
Yeah, the music it has that metal feel the same way Freddy vs. Jason did. And it's a good point. I don't know if Ronnie Yu actually made any more like high profile American movies after Freddy vs. Jason. I know that like he mostly was making movies overseas. But I don't know if he made any big like horror movies in America after Freddy vs. Jason. I think this might have been this and Bride of Chucky, or this and Freddy vs. Jason is pretty much it, I think. With this movie, interesting enough, after they filmed this, he put together sort of a rough cut of it, right? And then somehow, which is mind-blowing to me, somehow his work visa expired. So he actually had to leave the country, only doing his rough cut, basically. So then Mancini and like had to find a new editor. They basically, without Ronnie Yu even being there, had to like make the final cut of the movie. So like Ronnie Yu, even though it's Ronnie, he directed the movie, he didn't have any involvement in like the final cut because he had to go back to his country. So I don't know how you let the work visa expire. That sounds like some bungled up paperwork to have the director of your $1 million movie not be able, like, it just sounds
while crazy. You're working nonetheless.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, it's like, how does that even make sense?
I mean, I guess that's kind of what the movie The Proposal had going for it, but at the same time, it's like, I understand you're working, but shouldn't someone in the company you're currently working for give you that heads up? Like, hey, we noticed in your file your work visa's coming up.
Right, this is $1 million production. Someone should be like, look in the details here. So, and it's not to say that the movie would have been like radically different. We're just talking. I mean, he put together his rough cut, and based on that, I think they just added some things to it. Maybe Mancini put more of his. So actually, also while doing that final editing, they realized they had to do some reshoots. They went back and reshot some scenes with Mancini directing. So there are some reshoots here that Ronnie, you had nothing to do with. But I just thought it was interesting. It's always like interesting thing about like, you know, the director not being involved in the final cut. But yeah, so the storyline, again, inspired by Bride of Frankenstein. The movie takes place in 1998, which we know in part 3 there was a time jump basically to around 1998. Mm-hmm. So most fans theorize that part 3, because there was snow on the ground, had to be somewhere in the winter time-ish. And this movie, Jesse and Jade, our two main characters, they go to the prom, which is always like May, June-ish, right?
Right.
So this is probably a few months after the winter time in part 3.
There's a slight issue. They even give us the time of Chucky. Chucky is either Chucky or Tiffany. One of them mentions that he was gone for 8 years.
Uh-huh. So I think she's talking about when she last talked to him. I think she says 10 years. But I think she's talking about basically since he was a human being interacting with her. And that would make sense. 10 years, this movie's basically 10 years after the first one. So 10 years ago, he would have been a human still interacting with her. So I think that's what she meant by that.
I mean,
the movie definitely takes place in 1998. At least that's what even Mancini said that. So,
well, it could, but the other issue was that I noticed, not really an issue again, but something that kind of messes with me with the timeline, unless they're talking about him being gone between 2 and 3, was when he was playing with the radio in Jesse's vehicle, he even said, "Oh, music this day sucks."
Yeah.
Which, granted, again, watching the commentary, I found out originally they wanted to do Spice Girls for that scene, but no one would give them the rights to do it.
Well, to get a Spice Girl song in like 98 would have cost a lot of money, because at that time they were actually huge. So,
right. And of course, no one wants their music being shit on by a damn demented doll.
Well, that's the thing also. Yeah, exactly. Like, it wouldn't be like Chucky saying something nice about the music. So, no, I mean, I'm going with the idea that this is a couple months after part 3. It makes sense. He's still in the we'll call it the Lockport police inventory thingamajigger, which he's there joined by apparently the Freddy Claw, the Jason Mask, the Michael Mask.
Yes.
Only thing we're missing was probably, well, I guess what Candyman physical thing could there be of Candyman anyways, right? So
his hook. I mean, his character died. Did they bury the human version of him with his hook?
Here's the thing about that. Interesting enough, this movie came out a year after I Know What You Did Last Summer. So if there was a hook, would we associate that with Candyman, or we jump to Ben Willis?
Depends on how the hook was. Like, if it was a hook that looked like it belonged inside the stump, Candyman. If it was a hook that you just hold on to, a fisherman's hook, Ben Willis.
Because at this exact moment in 1998, I know Ben Willis was much more prominent than Candyman in 1998. Because this is when I think even I Know You Did Part 2 came out in 98. Part 1 was 97. So I think a hook would automatically be like, oh yeah, Ben Willis. Now, they would have never allowed it, but if you could have the Scream mask in there, that would have just put it over the top. But
oh, right.
Yeah, I wonder like what's the did they have to get some kind of right? Because obviously this is movies from Universal, but like the Freddy Claus New Line, like I wonder if like there was like any kind of rights issues there with like showing that stuff. So
probably not, because one, they didn't really use it. It was such a quick shot. I mean, there is that fair use policy that I don't know if it was going on then, because if it was, again, they would have gotten 5 seconds of a copywritten thing they could show. And then there's also, they could have possibly gotten Robert Englund's vote of approval for it too.
Because even I remember with Jason Goes to Hell, at the very end, you just have the Freddy Claw come up and bring the Jason mask down. The director said that, well, he knows they were both under New Line, so he was like, okay. He still asked like the studio, like, hey, is it cool if I use the Freddy glove just as like a fun thing? And the studio was like, yeah, of course, because obviously they're working towards Freddy vs. Jason. So it was interesting. I mean, the Freddy Claw, I think they show it for really like 2 seconds, really.
Yeah,
I would say it's really not seen that much.
And to be fair, you had to pay attention because it was hanging in the corner when it was really focusing on the Michael mask.
Yeah, and the fun thing about it is it makes it seem like in this universe that all these are real killers. So Chucky's in the same place that Michael exists and Freddy exists, and
you know what they forgot to add? A gold coin.
Yes, true. Should never take a leprechaun's gold. That would have been it. Now, if there was ever going to be a verse movie with Chucky, I think it would have had to been verse Leprechaun.
Yeah, right? But me and you even both brought up that would be kind of an unfair fight because Leprechaun has magic on his side, whereas Chucky is mostly all physical. Has to be physical.
Chucky is a creative killer for sure, but yeah, I don't know what's he gonna do against magic, right? So
he's gonna get blown up,
blown to smithereens. Well, this cop at the beginning basically is stealing Chucky's body parts from the inventory in order to sell it to a strange, mysterious woman who's going to offer him some money, but really plans to slit his throat and take the doll anyways.
Well, to be fair, that's why she put in his head, remember, curiosity killed the cat. That was her putting the idea in his head to get his attention off of where he was at, to then look in the bag, which gave her the opportunity to actually slit his throat.
Which is very bold because this is a cop, I'm assuming, with a gun, with weapons. Like, to walk up on a cop and slit his throat, it's like very. We're immediately like, okay, well, this woman is obviously like a killer herself. So,
I mean,
the first time I saw it, I'm pretty intrigued by this opening. It's actually a pretty fun thing. So,
I mean, we do find out that she was Charles Lee Ray's girlfriend, so it makes sense that she would be sick and demented along with him.
Yeah. So we're going to cut to basically her at the trailer park in which she has some Marilyn Manson looking guy who is
Alexis Arquette
making fake pictures of himself killing someone in order to get into her good graces.
Even though she can losing her shit over it too. It's like, you didn't actually kill anyone.
He's like, oh shit.
It's like, lady, I know you're blonde, but you kind of have to sometimes realize people have morals, even if they look like that.
Yeah. So apparently she knows that voodoo spell as well, because she's gonna use it again on Chucky. And
do you want to explain how she knows it? Because it's probably the most dumbest shit I've ever seen in a movie. But it's also hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's a Voodoo for Dummies book. Now,
why would something so powerful be in that kind of book?
You have to understand, back in the 90s, I mean, obviously this is before Wikipedia and everything was online. Everything you think of had a For Dummies book to it. It was a Cooking for Dummies. There's like anything you can think of. Changing a Flat Tire for Dummies. You went to the bookstore, there's a shelf of 1,000 For Dummies books. So comedically, it makes sense there'd be a Voodoo for Dummies book. But yeah, I mean, we're going full comedy here because, yeah, they're not like saying, oh, she's friends with John from part 1, so she knows the spell. She's got the damn Voodoo for Dummies book. So it's like page 7, the Chucky spell. Like, what?
And not only that, but what? So again, going on the damn book, what happens if a 12-year-old got this and had a good guy doll in front of her?
Right. True.
That little girl would be dead, or Chucky would be invading that little girl's personal and inner space.
Right. Exactly. Precisely. Well, it worked. The spell works, but I guess it's delayed because at least initially, either Chucky's playing possum and acting like he's not alive, or somehow her doing some kind of dance brings him back to life. I don't know,
So
but
no, he was alive. I get the feeling he was trying to get his surroundings again because it's at this point the last memory he has is hitting a giant fan. So
he probably has to be very interesting to like suddenly be jarred back to life and then be like, wait, where the hell? Like, especially if we're thinking that, yeah, his last memory was flying into a damn fan.
so and then he sees his last girlfriend Tiffany with some schmuck.
Yeah, I think he can put the pieces together here that she brought him back to life and that she really wants him to kill the guy, which this guy's going to die pretty quickly through just being suffocated with a pillow.
And a butt.
Yeah. Probably one of the funniest, but also horrible deaths you can think of. A doll sitting on a pillow on your face while you're tied to a bed. Jesus.
Yeah, if he wasn't tied to a bed, I'd be wondering, why is this the death?
Yeah.
He had to be. But the real question I have is when everything is said and done and Tiffany starts cuddling on the bed and crying because she realizes Chucky's an ass.
Well, she thought that he was... Well, he thought he wanted to marry him, but...
Well, why not undo the cuffs of the dead guy and push him out of your bed so you can actually lay on the bed? Instead, she's like trying to like push the body over. It's like, lady, you have a handcuff.
Well, she may not be like Chucky's level of like weird serial killer, but she's like right there, right below. So she definitely has some serial killer fetishes, let's say, and that might be one of them. Is like having the corpse in the bed is somehow appealing to her. So
makes me think of a Rob Zombie movie, which kind of matches, seeing as how we just got a Rob Zombie song, which she was introduced.
Which Rob Zombie movie are you speaking of?
House of a Thousand Corpses. Baby had a lot of dead bodies in her bed, along with a bunch of cheerleaders she was playing with.
I gotta say, maybe it's because the Halloween movies. I'm just not a Rob Zombie fan.
That's fair.
But maybe I could give his other movies a chance. Though it's just I'm like soured by like specifically Halloween 2. But even Halloween
again, that is fair. His type of directing is, let's just say, he still likes music videos.
Yeah. Well, she locks Chucky in a little playpen,
baby cage. Baby cage.
And Chucky actually draws nasty pictures and like plays with the toys, which is
see the thing is, I understand this movie is going for a 100% comedy. There's no way none of this is supposed to be horror because she's treating him like a baby instead of the actual threat he needs to be.
The fact that he's still ticklish like a baby is hilarious, though. He's ticklish like a baby.
Because I just watched the first 3. Now I did see this movie a long time ago. Didn't really pay attention because I was at another kid's birthday party, and now that I watch it after watching the first 3, is such a tonal shift that
it feels like a whole different thing basically and that's why the first 3 are kind of looked at as like they're their own separate trilogy, and this is the start of a new thing. You have to remember that too, like this time period, 1998, it's the time where like all the horror is like very self-aware, like referential. It's like the meta thing that Scream introduced, where it's like, okay, we know what this is. This is a killer doll. Let's make fun of it. It's just like it's not played straight the same way that the first 3 movies were. So it's jarring, but I mean, for the 4th entry in the series, you gotta almost. I mean, this is like. I mean, it happened to Freddy too. It always happens, but you got to do something different. And like, I think they realize also by now that Chucky really can't be the villain. Like Chucky's like the villain and the hero at the same time.
But he's still 100% the villain. There's no hero about him in this movie.
There's no hero, but you sort of get to see a different side of him, though, for sure. Like he has way more dialogue. His interactions with Tiffany is like you do see like I'm not saying a softer side, But at certain points in the movie, he seems to actually genuinely care about her. So like you do see like a different side of Chucky here. There's a lot of character development for him compared to the first 3 movies where he's just like focused on Andy Barclay. I think the funniest thing about this is that Chucky just being like, okay, I've tried this Andy Barclay thing 3 times now. Well, I guess part 3 was him sort of doing the tower thing. But he's like, I'm
Yeah.
not messing with Andy Barclay anymore. He's like, every time I try this shit goes wrong, I end up dead. So he's like completely moved on here from Andy Barclay. No mention of him, no thought to. I guess maybe if he gets back into a human body, he'll be like, okay, let me go get some revenge or something like that. But there's no thought of him at all to like go down the Andy Barclay path again in this movie, which is good because, like I said, what can you do? A 4th movie with that would be like, come on, man, we've seen this too much. So,
Well, because it's the 4th movie, they decided to add some lore that that should have been in the first 3 movies.
well, this is if there is a problem I have in the movie, it's just not adding lore, but basically retconning the entire first 3 movies. Okay, well, I'll try to justify it. Okay, so basically, after Chucky gets Tiffany implanted into the doll, they're both dolls.
Which how? Because we just found, we literally learned he needs a certain item to do that.
Well, so she's going to basically be reading the Voodoo for Dummies book, which Chucky's like, go ahead, chapter 11. Like he has his book memorized, which is like, okay.
John didn't teach him this time.
But it's revealed that in order to, according to Chucky, and according to the Voodoo for Dummies book, in order to actually get their souls back into a human body, they need something called the Heart of Dambala. Dambala. I can never pronounce it properly. Dambala.
You were close the first time. Yeah, there you go.
Dambala.
Yeah.
The Heart of Dambala.
Dambala.
Which is like a necklace bracelet thing that apparently Charles Lee Ray was wearing at the time he got shot in the toy store.
Really bad CG, really bad Photoshop, I might add.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if we went back and watched part 1, we're not going to see that thing hanging from his neck. So this is a pretty big retcon. Now, okay, to your point, specifically, you need that specifically apparently to get their souls in the body to be human, not necessarily to the other way around. The other way around, apparently, the voodoo spell they know works just to get the human soul into the toy or the doll, but to get it back into the human, you have to have the Heart of Dambala. Now, I'll try to justify this.
Please.
In the first 3 movies, there's no mention of this at all. At no point does Chucky have any knowledge about this being a thing.
Because Voodoo for Dummies wasn't out yet.
But we never saw him successfully transfer his soul into a human. So we don't know if what he was doing would have worked without the heart because we never saw it actually successfully happen. Somewhere in the timeline, Chucky read this Voodoo for Dummies book and was like, oh shit, that's what I've been missing. That's why it didn't work. So his friend John apparently, like, he was a smart voodoo guy, but he didn't have the knowledge that this Voodoo for Dummies book had.
Or he purposely left out that information.
Now, I mean, the hardest thing to figure out is like, yes, when did Chucky get this Voodoo for Dummies book? When did he find
8 years he was dead?
Because we saw all of Chucky. We saw the times he was alive in part 1, 2, and 3. So it's like between 3 and 4, how could he have possibly have gained this new knowledge? All right, so yeah, it's hard to justify it. It doesn't make any sense. But they need a reason to go on this road trip to go to his body. So I'll grant it that it doesn't make sense, but it has to be done.
So there is one thing I want to mention. Because Tiffany is a serial killer, even though this movie wants to constantly see multiple murderer, it just does not roll off the tongue as well. Let's go for the fact that I would assume that she is strong, strongish. And she proves that by lugging her crate of dead Arquette down the stairs. Almost seems like no issues at all.
That was a good pun, by the way. Dead Arquette. Well, she's going to come up with the master plan that they can use this couple to take them on this road trip to Hackensack. Now, why was Charles Lee Ray buried in Hackensack, New Jersey? Is that just like his hometown or something? Because he died in Chicago.
I guess I didn't
And
know.
who paid for him to get buried?
I don't know. Do I look like I know it? Why would you get buried?
I need
in
answers, Nick.
Hackensack?
Give me some answers, all right?
Why would you get buried in Hackensack?
I don't know. Now, let's talk about Jesse and Jade for a second. I know that you had texted me you're not the biggest fan of young Jesse and Jade, are would-be romantic, not star-crossed lovers, but just our romantic couple that hopefully are looking for a future together, but are going to come through some obstacles.
Personally, I think it's the fact that they constant arguing. I understand that they're playing the part of, oh, this person's a killer, or oh, this person's a killer, when what it should have been is, like, say either the girl or the guy both still assuming that they're the killer, but agreeing, no, I'm going to stay with this person. I'll be this person's Bonnie and Clyde because that's how much we love each other. No, the minute they see something wrong, they start turning on each other. What happened to sickness and health till death do us part?
Well, I think, first of all, they're very young. So the idea that they're at that point of till death do us part, yeah, they're worried the other person's a killer and they're going to kill them. So, I mean, there's a lot of evidence there being like, yo, did you kill him? Did you kill him? I can see them being suspicious, and they kind of play on that tension.
The other issue I have is I don't like them as actors in this. I cannot get behind them as characters I want to see survive.
Well, let's talk about the woman played by Katherine Heigl. Now, Katherine Heigl actually went on to have like a pretty good career.
Mm-hmm.
She's been in like a lot of stuff, but when I see her hair, something comes to mind, and I can't get it out of my mind.
Oh gosh!
Is that Katherine Heigl? Of course, from this movie, the next thing she did was that scene in Valentine where she locked herself in the body bag. She's the person at the hospital who decided that the best course of action to get away from the killer was to zip herself up in a body bag and be a sitting duck while the killer walks in and says, "Stupid idiot, zip herself up in the body bag. This is the easiest kill ever." So, I just can't help but think about that.
So now we know Katherine Heigl is not a good fit for horror.
Yeah, based on her role in Valentine, I cannot see her as a final girl because she had the dumbest death ever in Valentine. So that's one thing I'll say. That's not to comment on her acting here. I'm just saying that I can't get that out of my mind. Why would you zip yourself up in a body bag? But that's for another podcast.
Her acting here just I can't believe it. I can't believe it as someone who could survive this kind of situation. Is just granted, neither can I with Jesse. Jesse's not exactly the smartest in the bunch either.
Well, Jesse, not to comment on his intelligence, but he convinces her. He's like, listen, let's go on the road. We can start a new life together. But he seems to think having $1,000 is enough to like start a new life. I'm like, what? I don't think you understand, Jesse. He's like, I'll put a deposit down. He's acting like this $1,000 he's getting from this road trip is like $20,000. He's like, there's $500 waiting for us on the back end. Like, I'm like, yeah, maybe you should save some more money before you like are running away from home. But this $1,000 is not going to get you as far as you're thinking, Jesse.
Right, but at least her uncle seems to be a very kind and caring individual by trying to make sure she doesn't go with Jesse by planting weed in his truck so he can be arrested.
Yeah, well, we have the uncle from hell, our human villain. Our closest thing to human villain in this movie is
we get a lot of human villains in this movie.
We do, and that's what I mean by saying that. Not to say Chucky's the hero, but a lot of the people he's killing, it's like the audience is kind of on Chucky's side. You know, it's like you see, like they establish these human villains, and when Chucky kills them, you're not like on the human side. You're like, so this is John Ritter who plays the cop here, who from the TV show Three's Company. and he's hired he's paying this other cop
Needle nose.
he don't know is to like spy on them and do all this stuff, which that dude's kind of funny because he's just honest. He's just like, I'm doing it for like the money.
Oh yeah, he's just always like this.
He's got the goofiest grin. His death scene, which I'll just talk about right now, his death scene is fantastic. First of all, you have Chucky crawling back and forth between the two cars.
Right.
You have Chucky giving the finger to the stoner guy,
Right.
and the stoner guy just like he's like rude ass doll.
Fucking doll.
Come on, this is straight comedy. But then the cop's reaction, he's just like, ah! Ford explodes.
It's like, dude, how about get out of the car if you want to try and survive?
Them waving at him. I don't know, man. For me, like maybe it's my sense of humor, but like all the comedy in the movie like works for me. I'm laughing at like everything for some reason. I don't know why, but it's just maybe this is sense of humor. But the comedy works for me. I understand completely your side that they've abandoned all pretense of being a horror movie completely.
Well, how about we also talk about Warren's death real quick, because that gives us another little Easter egg to another horror movie franchise.
Well, here's what's funny about this scene too. It's like Chucky originally pulls out a knife, right? Because that's like he's like, you know, and Tiffany's like, you know, get into the 90s, right? Like that's so past tense. But the funny thing about that is this is 1998, so the biggest movies in horror right now are the Scream movies this time, which is a guy with a knife. So her being like, oh my God, the knife is so outdated. It's like, no, Ghostface is a knife. He's the biggest killer at that time in horror movies. So I don't think Tiffany knows what she's talking about here. So,
and also don't forget, all of his kills were more tension based than actual creative kills. So
yeah, and also going back to the first three movies, like Chucky rarely ever used the knife. I think he used a knife maybe once or twice, but most of his deaths are like pretty creative. Like, yeah, I don't remember using a knife much at all. So, but yeah, we get the pinhead reference here with the nails to the face, which Chucky being like, where have I seen that before?
I'm also trying to sit there and figure it out myself. Be like, why go through the trouble when, I mean, there's so much you could also do throughout this whole thing. Why go through the trouble of setting this up? I can understand it if maybe they want to, if they actually didn't like Jesse or need him, so they decide they're going to try and frame him. But in this case, they're literally doing it just to kill. It's like that. No, you want to be as effective as possible. And those nails prove that they weren't that effective when he got back up.
Remember, though, they get a kick out of the kill. So it's like for them, I think for them, the more creative way they can kill, they're impressing each other. And they just get more kick out of it than him just being like, you know, let me stab him. Not as efficient, but they're clearly, they want to do something creative with the kills. They get a bigger kick out of it.
So. Well, to be fair, Chucky doesn't care. He just likes the thrill of it. Tiffany's the one who wants the creative kills. Because once the guy gets back up later in the movie, Chucky just jumps right on top of him and stabs him like crazy, which actually turns Tiffany on. I mean, you can't beat an old classic.
Well, you know how those serial killer hormones work, so I guess, but
especially doll hormones.
Basically, at this, Jesse and Jade get married, even though she's 17 years old, I think. So I don't know if that's even legal for her to get married, but but they're married and they're gonna go to a honeymoon suite where they're getting ripped off by some grifters who are running some honeymoon scams. But fortunately, within doing that, they've pissed off Tiffany, who's gonna kill them in a pretty creative way.
This death I actually really like because I understand it's pretty nonchalant. She just throws the wine bottle up into the air and it breaks the glass above them, but the carnage that happened with all that glass just falling on top of them. You see the blood splurting, especially when the bunk bed just gets destroyed and comes up with it.
Yeah, it's mostly left to the imagination, I feel like. I mean, you see a lot of blood, but you really don't see like them getting stabbed. I would say that I would be very afraid of being under that kind of mirror for that reason. After watching the scene, just the idea of that, like glass falling on you, sounds so like, oh. But again, because this happens, they're both again suspicious of each other because they're like, hey, is the other person doing these killings? We should talk about their friend David, who's like kind of more of her best friend, I would say.
Well, he seems to be friends with both of them because he does help do what he can to help them out. He gives them advice, even though they don't listen to him. And now, before we get to David, let's talk about someone a little less important because I just want to annoy you a little bit by saying there's another movie nod in this. Only if you're a 90s kid, grew up in the 90s watching this particular movie and realized, hey, that woman lost some weight. With Kathy Najimy showing up as a housekeeper and screaming her bloody head off over the dead bodies in that room.
Now you want to tell us who Catherine Najimy is?
Kathy Najimy is from the movie Hocus Pocus. She played one of the Sanderson sisters. I can't remember the woman's name, the Sanderson sister's name, because let's face it, Winifred's the only one you really need to know.
I thought she looked familiar, absolutely. So I get that. So, well,
I just had to bring it up because I know how much it annoys you that I keep bringing up the more superior movie out of that and Buffy.
Oh. Hey, we're both slaves to nostalgia, I think. All right. And Hocus Pocus definitely has a nostalgic hold over you, my friend. All right. Well, we can get back to David now. Now, David would be your first, I would say, first relatively likable character to be killed. Everything up to this point has been just Chucky killing villainous people. But even this, to go back to the hero thing, even this, Chucky they don't kill David. David basically just is a victim of circumstance. He happens to walk into a truck coming at him.
Well, first I want to say, you say he's the first human death that we care about. He's the only one.
Yeah.
Because
you're not going to kill. There's not that many characters in this movie. You only have really the main couple, and you're not going to kill them. So
I kind of wish. Anyway, so yeah, he becomes the new painting for the road. You know, the truck runs him over, and then the trucker gets out of the truck. Pretty sure this is the same truck from Final Destination, by the way.
Yeah.
And
what if that was driver? I think it was Rusty Nails. Candy cane.
All right, so the trucker does as the cops show up, the trucker asks, so is this what y'all want? Is this the kind of paint y'all were looking for the new roads? And the cops say, no.
Why would we want?
We want paint, not blood.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on the trucker for a second. He's not really at fault because the guy dove in front of the truck.
No, he's not at fault at all. But the problem is so the guy gets out, and you can tell the trucker's just like, what was that kid's issues?
The funniest thing is coming up right after this, right? Because you get a quick thing of like the police car is chasing it. The back door opens up on the truck or the car, and Chucky shoots the police car and laughs, and the police car flies off the road. Hilarious. But of course they have to ditch the car now and get something with style.
So they killed an elderly couple and take an RV where Tiffany decides to feed her man.
Now this is probably low key the darkest part of the movie. The idea that they killed some innocent couple to take their RV. That's actually feels out of place, even though they're capable of doing that. That feels a little bit darker than what this movie is like going for. Like I said, for the most part, they keep Chucky and Tiffany likable by basically everything they're doing like feels reasonable for the most part. They're just trying to get there. They're only killing people that get in their way, basically. But the elderly couple thing, that it definitely feels a little bit darker, I would say, than the tone of the movie. So
I will say, the commentary, Don Mancini apparently still laughed when he saw that movie. When he watched the movie for the first time and saw that scene, he apparently laughed when Tiffany was just like, grabs the apron and puts it on. But but I will say, at the very least, they didn't torture the elderly couple. It looks like they just got 2 bullet holes in the head, which was quick, painless death. Even though they had fears of faces, but what would you think when you saw a puppet just aiming a gun at you?
I'm thinking how it plays out, though. It seems so unnecessary. If you just threatened them with a gun and said, get out, they would have got out and just ran away.
Again, this is Chucky and Tiffany we're talking about.
killing them seems extremely unnecessary, anyways. But let's not get too sidebar into this poor couple. But
Well, how about we
um,
all? But the whole unnecessary part is our next scene where where our two main characters and Chucky and Tiffany are arguing and eventually get into a bloody fight over dishes.
oh, this is so necessary because this is hilarious.
No,
Hilarious.
it was annoying. It's
No
like
way.
it's
This
like
is
you
so
two
funny.
have been the smartest characters in the whole movie. Granted, that's saying something.
Yeah.
And y'all are literally going to risk everything that y'all are worked up for dishes. This
It's
is
not
like
not dishes. It just escalates from there because Chucky now basically, again, I'm not saying Chucky's a hero here, but he's opening up to Jesse about married life and how much he enjoys it. And then Jesse seeing that is like, oh, I can plant a seed here of distrust by just saying, hey, she's not the best housekeeper. That makes Chucky think like, hey, can you do those dishes? Which Tiffany's like, and then Jade immediately gets it, and now she's playing on Tiffany's weaknesses here about the whole thing about the guy can at least do the dishes. They're just having a basic argument, but it's enough of a distraction for Jade to kick her into the oven. And also the funniest thing is like Chucky throwing the cookie back at her, be like, and where'd you learn how to bake?
well, the real question I got. I say that a lot, don't I? Anyway, the real question I got.
That's the real question I got is how much do you say that?
So the how
that's
many
gonna be
dishes
like,
do you need to? How many dishes do you need to make Swedish meatballs?
A lot. There's dishes everywhere.
Yeah, there is like
They
Swedish
look like
meatballs and cookies.
They fed like 7 people apparently.
What you need for both of those, you need at least a mixing bowl for for the seasonings for the meatballs and the mix.
Yeah.
You need a pan to fry the meatballs in.
Yeah.
I guess let's say another pan to mix the sauce in, and then you put it on top of the meatballs as they're still frying in the same pan. So that's 3. And then for cookies, a mixing bowl and a pan. Yeah. So you only need 5. Why is there like 80 dishes?
I'm imagining like I just don't think she made those cookies from scratch. I think those are probably like the Pillsbury dough cookies. You just like
well then the 4. She only needed 4.
Those meatballs could have been microwaved up meatballs. We don't know. Yeah. Yeah. The look. Jesse has a point. That RV is a mess. Somebody does need to clean that. But yeah. So basically now, but unfortunately, Tiffy's going to become Cajun food because she's stuck in the oven. And
everyone likes a little Cajun in their life.
Yeah, but you don't want your wife to be Cajun food though. And Chucky's now like,
well, damn. Chucky does. No. Are you kidding me? Do you not see how hard he swings his shovel at him when they do their shovel fight?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't want your wife to be burned to a crisp. Is what I'm saying. So, no. I see what you're saying.
Chucky don't care.
No, but think about this. She turns on him. He doesn't turn on her. She actually backstabs him. Ultimately, he's like, why? Because he felt she betrayed him, and she did. She became so sympathetic to Jade and Jesse, even though Jade done kicked her ass in the oven. She's still sympathetic and is like, oh, they're so romantic. We belong in hell. They deserve whatever.
See, I don't understand that. I actually don't understand that. Why did Tiffany's personality about the whole situation completely divert and change just because of this couple? I get the feeling this woman is a serial killer. She's most likely a psychopath. So she wouldn't care about 2 random people in order to do this.
She is, but from the very beginning, her weakness is that she's clearly like overly romantic. Like the whole thing with Chucky, like wanting him to have married her. And then, so she's kind of like all that stuff her mom told her. Her weakness is that she's like a hopeless romantic. So something about them, their innocence or whatever, just triggers that. Although
I feel like that would actually make her more mad. Actually, it's like, oh, they get something I don't get. as a psychopath, she would be going insane.
It's a bit of a jump for her to suddenly be like, listen, we belong in hell. And Chucky's just like, what are you talking about? What the hell? Like, I'm still going to get my heart of Dembla to get. He's like, we're already here. Now the guy digging up the grave is because this is kind of mind blowing. All the deaths that have been happening, the police have been, I guess, doing a thorough investigation, and the fingerprints they're finding are the fingerprints of Charles Lee Ray. So somehow Chucky the doll's fingerprints are still Charles Lee Ray's fingerprints. So
And
because
yet,
of that, they're like, we're gonna go dig up the corpse to see if Charles Lee Ray is doing the killings.
and yet they didn't do that in the first 3 movies. Because he was a doll, so he didn't have the fingerprints. But now all of a sudden, movie 4, he does.
Well, the biggest thing with the first 2 movies is we have no idea still who took accountability for all those deaths. Like, who was charged? Like, how do they think those people died?
I'm assuming Andy, because we see him at the end of part 3 being arrested. We don't get anything after that. We don't even get anything in this movie saying that he's at least out.
The problem with it being Andy is you have so many witnesses between De Silva, Mike Norris. You have so many witnesses now that have seen Chucky that can actually, you have like 10 people that can be like, listen, I know it sounds crazy, but there's 10 of us. We all saw it was a damn doll that did the killings. So
and they're all wearing white jackets.
I guess so, man. Yeah. Well, we'll catch up with Andy later in the series, actually. So I know for a fact that he's not in jail because we find out later in the series. But yeah, maybe in this context right now, Andy's somewhere in court, like fighting the case while Chucky's doing this. Yeah, so she betrays Chucky and we get a nice shovel fight. And Chucky ends up stabbing her and telling her, get off my knife.
And then Jesse throws him in the grave where Jade shoots him.
And Chucky freaks out when he sees his own skeleton.
Right. It's like
freaks the hell out, which is funny.
Like you've seen plenty of dead bodies. Why does a random skeleton, when you jokingly, by the way, the editing of this movie I need to bring up.
Is it because it's its own corpse though? It's his own corpse that maybe freaks him out, I guess.
Probably, but let's talk about the editing because it's happened a couple of times in this movie. But I think the most egregious one to me is the ending right before our puppet fight, where Jade's in the grave. Okay, she throws the amulet, and not even 1 second later, she's out of the grave. I'm sorry, and it happens like that kind of multiple times in this movie. The editing seems a little choppy at certain scenes. That may be scenes where Ronnie Yu didn't have any kind of input. I'm pretty much beat the nail over the head with what I don't like about this movie. So I'll say it all again in a quick succession and then say what I like. So the first things I don't really care about this movie is, first off, Jennifer Tilly's voice. She's a good actress, and I just said a positive and a negative right there. She's a good actress.
Right.
But to me, her voice is grating. I don't know if that's why Don Mancini really wanted her. The other thing is I'm not a big fan of, I was expecting after seeing 1, 2, and 3 to come into this expecting at least some horror. I don't get any real horror. Chucky's not really intimidating anymore to me. He really wasn't in the others, but we were following the eyes of a kid. This one we're following 2 teens who should easily be able to kick Chucky into next year.
Now, one thing I'll say interesting, when you watch the first one, your complaint was you actually were expecting more comedy. But I think as you watch the first 3, you got used to the more
serious tone.
Because remember, in the first one, you're like, man, I think this should be just comedy. This shouldn't be taken seriously. But
in my opinion, the way they did 2 and 3 again still went a little more comedic. But 2 was that perfect. This is the perfect Chucky's a perfect.
But with Bride, do you think Bride would give you a higher appreciation for part 1 focusing more on the horror?
Yeah,
part 1 doesn't focus on the comedy at all, obviously.
No, it doesn't. It wants to take itself seriously. And yeah, you're right. That was my negative because you get a doll as your villain. That makes no sense why you want it so serious.
I think it's all based too, like, on what you saw first. I know, like, I think you said you saw Bride of Chucky first.
Yeah, I did
So
a
you
long
so
time
you
ago.
so you had this image of like, okay, this is what Chucky is, and then the first one is a dramatic tone shift from this and the first one have a completely different dramatic
Mm.
tones. The first one is not self-referential. There's no comedy, so
No, but
yeah.
that's
So
pretty much my main negative. Also, I didn't like the main characters of Jesse and Jade. I just I kind of wanted to square up with them, you know. I just that Jesse had such a punchable face, especially since he could not even drag that damn chest. Like this woman could have picked this chest up and beat you over the head with it by the time you even got it moved 10 inches.
hey, listen, at least Jade didn't zip herself up in a body bag. All right,
This time.
there is one positive here, right?
But overall, like but those are my negatives. But since that is a majority of the movie, it kind of knocks it down under the first movie for me by a lot. And also, as you know, I do prefer more serious movies or that perfect mix. Like Nightmare 3, Child's Play 2 was that perfect mix from what I was expecting of this type of character. So my positives is I really like the fact that they're going full out with the kills, even though they are ridiculous as all hell. But they did get
they're a little more bloodier and gorier than the kills we're used to in Chucky, I would say. And that's like a Ronnie, you thing, I think, is like more blood. So
yeah, I like the kills in it, and I like Chucky, and I like the fact, and I like the score. I love metal, so definitely like the score of it.
You're a metalhead, so
oh yeah, minus the piercings because I have none. And also all the different nods to horror movies was all fun to be able to point out and say, hey. So overall, movie is not really what I was expecting. I was expecting to be a little bit more like it a little more, but it is an entertaining watch for me the first time. So I'm giving it a 2. And I will just have to give it to you for the rest of the positives.
And one thing I'll say too is when we're done with the series, we're gonna do one of those ranking videos. So like I think you gave Child's Play for the first one too, but like I said, I think maybe watching the rest of the series will give you a higher appreciation for the first one when you see where the rest of the series goes. So maybe retroactively with the rankings in the end, we'll see how you kind of rank them all. I guess like for me, just having seen the entire series, and I'll say this too, I do have definitely some nostalgia towards Bride of Chucky. Me and a friend watched this movie back when it first came out on video and laughed our asses off the entire time. I remember that fondly. So I don't know, man. Maybe it's just like the mood I was in when I watched it, but all the comedy clicked for me. I was laughing as much now as I laughed back then. And I think I mentally approach it as a comedy. So for me, I'm not disappointed by the lack of horror because I'm like, all right, this movie is really just about we're going all out with Chucky as our hero / villain. I like the death scenes for the most part. Like I said, the Ronnie Yu style, I don't mind as much. I was obviously a relatively decent fan of Freddy vs. Jason, unlike Nick Arcana. I agree. I don't like the main characters, but I see the main characters more as Chucky and Tiffany. I see the human characters as like the secondary characters. So then I'm like, okay, well, I dig the actual main characters, which is Chucky and Tiffany. I think they're the main characters really, and the human characters are kind of they're not the best in the series by any stretch. But man, I still for me, I still gotta go 3 stars just based on the fun factor. I think if you watch this in the right mood, there's a lot of comedy to be had here. I think this is like Chucky at his best. Although I can definitely understand where it's like that perfect blend is like Nightmare 3. This might for some people go into like Freddy's Dead territory. That's like over the top comedy kind of thing. But yeah, I got a kick out of it. I mean, I know this was the most popular one in our poll we did. I think the fan base has the most fun with this one. Although ultimately, I think so far, I think Child's Play 2 is probably superior for sure. But yeah, I'm going 3 stars just on the fun factor, kind of knowing what to expect with it. And like I said, nobody zipped themselves up in a body bag, so I was immediately encouraged by that. So
You're never gonna let Katherine Heigl forget that, are you?
no, I just don't understand the writers of that movie. Why did you do that to her? Anyways.
Well, and as always, folks, you don't have to go home. You do have to get yourself some volcanic agate if you want better imagination.
And when you're planning your next vacation, just cross Hackensack, New Jersey off the list. There's really no reason to go there, and unless you have to dig up your corpse to get a imaginary heart of Damballa
and ask yourself,
amulet.
Who names a town Hackensack?
I feel like that's where Friday 13th should have taken place, Hackensack, New Jersey, because like you had Sackhead Jason walking around the woods hacking people up.
That's probably why they did that.
Let's make that canon that Crystal Lake is in Hackensack.